I still remember the exact moment everything started falling apart. Not because of the loss, not because of the final whistle, but because of what Nathaniel did afterward. If you had told me at the start of that season that my soccer teammate, the same guy who spent every practice trash talking me, stealing my water bottle, and acting like he didn't care about anything, would end up completely changing my life, I would have laughed in your face. Back then, Nathaniel was just Nathaniel, our team's star forward, the guy everyone liked, the guy every girl seemed to have a crush on, and the guy I absolutely could not stop thinking about. I never told anyone I was gay, not my teammates, not my coaches, not even my closest friends. Soccer was my entire life. I had spent years building a reputation, earning respect, and becoming one of the team's starting midfielders. The last thing I wanted was to become the gay player. So I kept it buried, especially when it came to Nathaniel, which wasn't easy. The problem with having a crush on someone you see almost every day is that they slowly become impossible to ignore. Every practice, every bus ride, every team dinner, every stupid joke, every grin. Every time he threw an arm around my shoulder after a win, it all got under my skin. Nathaniel had this energy that filled every room he walked into. He wasn't loud all the time. Actually, when it was just the two of us, he could be surprisingly quiet, thoughtful even. But around the team, he became the center of attention without even trying. Meanwhile, I was the opposite. I kept my head down, focused on soccer, focused on school, focused on literally anything that would stop me from staring at him. Most days it worked. Some days it didn't. Like the day our season officially began. Coach gathered us around midfield after practice. One goal this year, he said. Championship. Everybody nodded. We'd come close the previous season. Painfully close. Lost in the semifinals after extra time. The memory still stung. This is the best squad we've had in years, Coach continued. If you guys commit, there's no reason we can't win it all. The team erupted, everyone shouting, everyone hyped. Nathaniel immediately jumped onto my back. Did you hear that, Cole? He yelled. I nearly collapsed under his weight. Get off me, idiot, he laughed. Nope. The guys around us started cheering. I rolled my eyes, but secretly, I wished the moment would last longer. That was the dangerous thing about Nathaniel. The smallest interactions felt important, even when they shouldn't. Over the next few months, our season became something special. We kept winning, game after game, week after week. The chemistry on the team was insane, and somehow, Nathaniel and I became even closer. It happened naturally. We trained together, studied film together, started grabbing food after practice. Sometimes we'd stay in the parking lot, talking for an hour after everyone else had gone home. Most of the conversations were stupid. Movies, classes, relationships, life, normal stuff. But every now and then, he'd open up. One night after practice, we sat on the hood of my car watching the sunset. Nathaniel looked unusually serious. You ever feel like everybody expects something from you all the time? I glanced at him. What do you mean? He shrugged. I don't know. A long silence followed. My parents, another pause. The team, he laughed softly. Half the school. I wasn't used to hearing him talk like this. Usually he kept everything light. Sounds exhausting. It is. For a moment, he just stared toward the horizon. Then he looked at me. You ever feel that way? I almost laughed. If only he knew. Every single day felt like acting, pretending, hiding, making sure nobody noticed the truth. Yeah, I finally said. Sometimes. His eyes lingered on me for a second longer than usual. Then he nodded, like he understood more than I had actually said. That moment stayed with me, because after that, something changed. Not dramatically, not obviously, just enough for me to notice. Nathaniel started seeking me out more, sitting next to me on bus rides, texting me random memes at midnight, showing up early to practice just to hang out. The team noticed too. You two dating or something? One of our defenders joked during practice. Everyone laughed, including Nathaniel. But for a split second, our eyes met, and neither of us seemed to find it funny. I quickly looked away, my heart pounding. That was when I knew I was in trouble, because this wasn't just some harmless crush anymore. The closer Nathaniel got, the harder it became to protect myself. And the worst part, I wasn't sure he felt nothing. I kept catching him looking at me. Not constantly, not enough to be obvious, just enough to make me wonder. And wondering was dangerous, especially with the championship getting closer, especially when everything we had worked for was suddenly within reach. Neither of us knew it yet, but before the season ended, we'd lose the biggest game of our lives. And afterward, standing alone beneath the stadium lights, Nathaniel would do something that neither of us could ever take back. The closer we got to the championship, the more intense everything became. Practice wasn't practice anymore. It was war. Coach pushed us harder than ever. Extra conditioning, film sessions, weekend workouts. Nobody complained. We were too close. One more win, then another, then another. Suddenly we were standing in the state championship, the biggest game our school had played in over a decade. The entire town seemed obsessed. Teachers talked about it. Parents talked about it. Even people who had never watched soccer before suddenly cared. The pressure was everywhere. And somehow, despite all of it, Nathaniel remained the person I looked forward to seeing every day. A week before the final, we stayed late after practice. Everyone else had already left. The sun was setting behind the bleachers, painting the field orange. Nathaniel sat beside me on the grass. Neither of us said much at first. We were exhausted. Eventually, he stretched his legs out in front of him. You nervous? I laughed, terrified. Good. I looked at him. Good. If you weren't nervous, I'd be worried. I shook my head. You're unbelievable. He grinned. You love me. The words hit me harder than they should have. My stomach immediately tightened. Nathaniel was smiling, completely unaware. At least I thought he was. I forced a laugh. You're annoying. That's not a denial. I rolled my eyes, but for some reason, neither of us looked away. The air suddenly felt strange, quieter, heavier. Nathaniel's smile faded slightly. His eyes stayed locked on mine. And for a second, a very long second, it felt like something was about to happen. Then Coach shouted from across the field, "Get out of here, you two." The moment shattered instantly. Nathaniel stood up. Saved by Coach. My heart was hammering. Yeah, but I wasn't sure whether I felt relieved or disappointed. The week flew by. Before I knew it, championship day arrived. The stadium was packed. Far more people than I'd ever seen at one of our games. Students filled the stands. Parents waved banners. The marching band was already playing. Everything felt unreal. Inside the locker room, nobody was talking much. The energy was different, focused, tense. Nathaniel sat beside me while we tied our cleats. Neither of us spoke. There wasn't anything left to say. We had spent months preparing for this. Now it was time. Coach gathered us together. "This is your moment." Everyone listened. "You've earned the right to be here." He pointed toward the tunnel. "Now finish it." The team erupted. Adrenaline surged through me. We sprinted onto the field. The crowd exploded, and for the next 2 hours, nothing else existed. Just soccer. The game was brutal, fast, physical. Every challenge felt like a collision. Every possession mattered. By halftime, the score was tied, 1-1. Nobody sat down for long. Coach adjusted a few things. We drank water, caught our breath, then went back out. The second half felt even harder. Both teams were exhausted. Nobody wanted to make the mistake that ended their season. I remember looking at Nathaniel during a corner kick, sweat running down his face, chest rising and falling, completely focused. He looked over, caught me staring, raised an eyebrow. I quickly looked away. He smirked. Even during the biggest game of our lives, he somehow found a way to mess with me. The idiot. The score remained tied until the final minutes. Then, disaster struck. One bad bounce. One defensive mistake. One shot. Goal. 2-1. Them. The stadium went silent. At least it felt that way. We still had time. Barely. Everyone pushed forward, desperate. Coach screaming from the sideline, the crowd willing us to score. Nathaniel nearly equalized with 30 seconds left. His shot hit the crossbar. The sound still haunts me. Then came the whistle. Game over. Championship gone. Just like that. Months of work disappeared in a single moment. I dropped to my knees. Around me, teammates stood frozen. Some cried. Some stared at the grass. Some looked completely numb. The opposing team celebrated wildly. I couldn't even watch. Everything hurt. Not physically, emotionally. The kind of hurt that settles deep inside your chest. Eventually we shook hands, accepted medals that felt meaningless, posed for photos nobody wanted. Then the crowd slowly disappeared. Parents left, students left, the stadium emptied. The season was over. I found myself wandering toward the far end of the field, away from everyone, away from the noise. I just wanted a minute alone. The stadium lights still glowed overhead. The field looked almost beautiful in the silence. I sat in the front row of empty bleachers, staring at nothing, trying not to think, trying not to feel. Footsteps approached behind me. I didn't have to turn around. I already knew who it was. Nathaniel sat beside me. Neither of us spoke. Several minutes passed. Finally, he sighed. "I keep replaying that shot." I nodded. The crossbar? Yeah. His voice sounded broken. If it was 2 inches lower, it wasn't your fault. Nathaniel laughed bitterly. Tell my brain that. We sat there quietly. The night air felt cool against my skin. For the first time all season, there was nowhere else to be. No practice tomorrow, no next game, nothing. Just us. Eventually, Nathaniel looked at me. I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. I frowned. What do you mean? The season's over. His eyes stayed on mine, and everything feels different. Something about the way he said it made my pulse quicken. What feels different? He opened his mouth, then closed it again, like he was debating whether to say something. The silence stretched between us, long, uncomfortable, important. Finally, he stood up. Come with me. I blinked. Where? Just come on. Before I could ask another question, he started walking toward the dark side of the stadium. And for some reason, despite every warning bell going off in my head, I followed him. Because something in his voice told me this wasn't about soccer anymore. I followed Nathaniel across the empty stadium without asking any more questions. Partly because I trusted him, partly because I was curious, mostly because my heart had been acting weird around him for months, and apparently I had lost the ability to make smart decisions. The field lights cast long shadows across the concrete walkway as we moved toward the far side of the stadium. Nathaniel still hadn't said a word. Neither had I. The silence wasn't awkward exactly, just tense, like something important was waiting for us. Eventually, we reached the visitors' bleachers. Nobody was around. The parking lot beyond them was nearly empty. The celebration from the opposing team had long since disappeared. For the first time all day, it felt completely quiet. Nathaniel stopped walking. I stopped a few feet behind him. Okay, I finally said. He let out a long breath, then turned toward me. His expression caught me off guard. I'd seen Nathaniel angry, happy, excited, competitive. I'd never seen him look nervous. Not once. Until now. You ever feel like you're pretending? He asked. The question hit me immediately. My stomach tightened. What? He rubbed the back of his neck. Like you're playing a role all the time. I stared at him, the same way I had stared at him weeks earlier when he'd asked a similar question after practice. Only this time, it felt different. Much different. Nathaniel looked away toward the empty field. I don't know how to explain it. Try. He laughed quietly. That's the problem. For a moment, neither of us moved. The cool night air drifted through the stadium. Finally, Nathaniel spoke again. You know, you're my best friend, right? My heart immediately skipped. Yeah. His eyes found mine. No. His voice was softer now. I mean it. I swallowed. You're my best friend too. The corner of his mouth twitched, but he didn't smile. If I tell you something. He stopped, then shook his head. Forget it. I took a step forward. No. His eyes lifted. What? Don't do that. Do what? Start saying something, and then bail. Nathaniel laughed despite himself. You're annoying. You've told me that before. Because it's true. For a second, the familiar version of us returned. The easy version, the comfortable version. Then it disappeared again. Nathaniel looked down at the ground. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded almost defeated. I don't think I like girls. Everything inside me froze. The stadium, the night, the world, everything. I genuinely thought I had heard him wrong. Nathaniel looked up, saw my expression, and immediately winced. Yeah, he laughed nervously. That's about the reaction I expected. I couldn't find words. Not because I was upset, because I was stunned. Completely stunned. Nathaniel, the guy every girl wanted, the guy who had dated more people than anyone on the team, the guy I'd spent months trying not to fall for, was standing in front of me looking terrified. I broke up with Emma 3 weeks ago, he said. I remembered. Everybody knew. Most people assumed it was because they were heading to different colleges. Apparently, it wasn't. I didn't tell anyone why. I still couldn't speak. Nathaniel continued, because I didn't know how. The vulnerability in his voice hurt to hear. This was someone who always seemed confident, always seemed sure of himself. Now he looked completely exposed, like he was waiting for me to judge him, to leave, to laugh, to say something awful. Instead, I took another step closer. Nathaniel. He looked at me. You're okay. The tension in his shoulders loosened slightly. You sure? Yeah. A small smile appeared, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him all night. You have no idea how scared I was to tell you. I laughed softly. Trust me. If only he knew. If only he had any idea. Nathaniel stared at me for a second, then frowned. Wait. Uh-oh. What? His eyes narrowed. Why are you being so calm about this? I felt my pulse spike, immediately, dangerously. People come out every day. That's not what I mean. His gaze stayed fixed on me, studying me, analyzing me, the way he did before a big game, like he was trying to solve something. Then his eyes widened slightly. A realization. My stomach dropped. Nathaniel took a step forward. Cole. I didn't answer. Cole. His voice was quieter now. Are you? The question hung unfinished between us. My chest felt tight. This was the moment I had imagined 100 different ways. And somehow, none of those fantasies prepared me for the reality. I looked away first, which was answer enough. The silence that followed felt enormous. Then I heard Nathaniel laugh, not mockingly, not cruelly, relieved, almost happy. When I looked back at him, his eyes were shining. You idiot. I blinked. What? His grin grew wider. You absolute idiot. I stared at him, completely confused. Nathaniel shook his head. I've been trying to figure it out for months. Now my brain stopped functioning entirely. What? Months? What do you mean, months? He laughed again. Cole, you practically panic every time somebody jokes about us. I do not. You absolutely do. I don't. You do. Despite everything, we both started smiling. The tension cracked slightly, but only slightly, because underneath the humor was something much bigger. something neither of us had fully acknowledged yet. Nathaniel's smile slowly faded. His eyes remained locked on mine, closer now, much closer. Neither of us moved, neither of us looked away. The air suddenly felt charged, like the entire world had narrowed down to this one moment. Just him, just me, just the space between us. And for the first time, I began to wonder if he was thinking the exact same thing I was. Neither of us moved. The space between us couldn't have been more than a few feet, but it felt like standing on the edge of something huge. Nathaniel looked nervous again, which somehow made me even more nervous. For years, I'd imagined what it would feel like if he ever knew the truth. I had imagined rejection, awkwardness, distance. I had never imagined this. Never imagined him standing here, looking at me like I was the only person in the world. "Cole," he said quietly. "Yeah?" His gaze dropped for a second, then came back to mine. "I think you've been driving me insane." I let out a nervous laugh. That's a weird thing to say. "I'm serious." The smile that appeared on his face was small, uncertain. I couldn't figure out why I kept wanting to be around you. My heartbeat was getting ridiculous. Nathaniel shook his head. At first, I thought it was because we were friends. That seems reasonable. "Yeah," he laughed. Then I started making excuses to text you. I looked down, smiling despite myself. And then I realized I was paying more attention to you than anyone else. The honesty in his voice hit harder than anything else. There was no joking now, no teasing, no hiding, just truth. The kind that felt terrifying, for both of us. I didn't know what to do with that, he admitted, so I ignored it. "How'd that work out?" "It didn't." We both laughed. The sound echoed softly through the empty stadium. For the first time since the championship ended, the crushing weight in my chest felt lighter. The loss still hurt, but somehow it wasn't the only thing I felt anymore. Nathaniel stepped closer. Not enough to touch me, just enough to make my pulse jump again. "You know what the worst part is?" "What?" he smiled. "I think everyone figured it out before we did." I groaned. "Oh no." "Oh yes." "Who?" Nathaniel immediately pointed. "Tyler, our center back." I started laughing. "Actually, yeah. Right? He definitely knew something. He kept giving me these weird looks." I shook my head. "He gave me weird looks too." Nathaniel laughed. "See?" For a few minutes we talked, really talked. The tension was still there, but now it felt different, less frightening, more hopeful. We sat on the lowest row of the empty bleachers, the same stadium where we'd just suffered the worst loss of our lives. Yet somehow it had become the best conversation I'd ever had. Nathaniel told me about months of confusion, how he'd started noticing things, how breaking up with Emma forced him to confront feelings he didn't understand, how scared he'd been. I told him pieces of my own story, not everything, just enough. Enough for him to understand, enough for him to know he wasn't alone. The more we talked, the easier it became, like we'd both been carrying giant weights around for years. Now, we were finally setting them down. At some point, Nathaniel leaned back and stared at the stadium lights. "Can I tell you something embarrassing?" I smiled. "Absolutely." "I used to get jealous." I blinked. "Jealous?" He nodded. "Whenever other people got your attention." For a second, I genuinely forgot how to breathe. "What?" His face turned red, actually red. Nathaniel, the guy who never got embarrassed. I know. He covered his face. Trust me, I know. I couldn't stop smiling. You're serious? Unfortunately, I laughed. You got jealous? He pointed at me. Don't enjoy this so much. I'm definitely enjoying this. Nathaniel groaned. Then, despite himself, started laughing too. The sounds slowly faded. The smiles remained. And then, the silence returned. Only this time, it felt warm, comfortable, dangerous. Because now there was nothing left to hide behind. No secrets, no confusion, just two people sitting together under stadium lights, knowing exactly how they felt. Nathaniel looked at me again, a different look this time, gentler, more vulnerable. I keep thinking about something. What? His eyes didn't leave mine. The joke I made after practice. I frowned. What joke? You love me. Oh, that joke. The memory immediately resurfaced. The field, the sunset, the moment that almost felt like something. Nathaniel's smile softened. I wasn't completely joking. The words landed directly in my chest. Everything became quiet. Not around us, inside me. I could see the nervousness in his face, the uncertainty, the fear, because despite everything we'd already admitted, this was different. This was bigger. I swallowed hard. Nathaniel. His eyes searched mine, waiting, hoping, terrified. And suddenly, I understood something. He wasn't just risking our friendship. He was risking his heart. The same way I was. The same way we both had been for months. Maybe longer. So I took a breath, then another, and finally said the thing I'd wanted to say for longer than I cared to admit. I think I do. Nathaniel froze. For 1 second. 2. Then the biggest smile I'd ever seen spread across his face. The kind of smile that made it impossible not to smile back. Neither of us looked away. Neither of us needed to. Because for the first time, everything was finally out in the open. And yet, somehow, it felt like the beginning of something, not the end. For a few seconds after I said it, neither of us spoke. I think I do. The words hung between us. Simple, honest, terrifying. Nathaniel was still smiling. Not the confident grin he showed everyone else. This was different. Softer. Real. Like he'd been hoping to hear those words for a long time. You have no idea how happy I am right now, he admitted. I laughed nervously. Actually, I think I do. The smile never left his face. Neither did mine. And that was the strange thing. A few hours ago, we'd lost the championship. I should have been miserable. Instead, sitting beside Nathaniel under those stadium lights, I felt lighter than I had in years. Maybe because I wasn't hiding anymore. Maybe because he wasn't either. Or maybe because the person I'd spent months trying not to love was sitting right next to me, feeling the same way. Nathaniel leaned back against the bleacher. You know what's funny? What? I had this whole speech planned. I immediately laughed. A speech? Yeah, he groaned. It was terrible. Now I need to hear it. No chance. Absolutely yes. Nathaniel shook his head. I refuse. Coward. He pointed at me. Don't get brave now. We both laughed. The conversation flowed naturally after that, almost surprisingly naturally, as if we'd been building toward this moment for so long that once we finally arrived, everything became easier. We talked about college, the future, the team, all the things we'd usually talk about. Except now, there was a different layer beneath everything, an awareness. Every glance felt more meaningful. Every smile lingered longer. At one point, our shoulders brushed. Neither of us moved away. My pulse immediately betrayed me. Nathaniel noticed. Of course he noticed. His grin returned. Oh my God. I rolled my eyes. What? You're nervous? No, I'm not. You absolutely are. I looked away, which was apparently confirmation. Nathaniel laughed. Cole, we've known each other for 2 years. Your point? My point is, you're terrible at hiding things. That's rich coming from you. His face immediately turned red again, and somehow, seeing Nathaniel embarrassed was becoming one of my favorite things. The night stretched on. The stadium grew quieter. Eventually, only a few maintenance workers remained. The reality that we should probably leave started creeping into both of our minds. Neither of us seemed eager to mention it. Nathaniel finally checked his phone. Damn. What? It's late. I looked too, much later than I expected. Yeah. Neither of us stood up. Nathaniel laughed softly. We're both avoiding it. A little. A lot. A lot. He smiled. Then his expression slowly grew serious again. Not sad, just thoughtful. Cole. Yeah? His eyes met mine. What happens now? The question hit me harder than expected, because honestly, I didn't know. Everything had changed tonight. The friendship we'd built, the feelings we'd admitted, the future we'd imagined separately. Now all of it felt uncertain. Not in a bad way, just new. I thought for a moment, then answered honestly. I guess we figure it out. Nathaniel nodded slowly. Together. The word wasn't spoken, but I could feel it. The thought seemed to comfort him too, because his shoulders relaxed, his smile returned, and for a few moments, neither of us felt rushed anymore. Eventually we stood. The walk toward the parking lot felt strangely significant, like crossing a line, leaving behind the old version of our lives. Neither of us mentioned it. We didn't need to. The silence between us had become comfortable. When we reached my car, we stopped. The lot was almost empty. Only a handful of vehicles remained. Nathaniel shoved his hands into his pockets, suddenly looking nervous again. I recognized the expression immediately, because I was feeling the exact same thing. Neither of us wanted the night to end. Not yet. Well, I said. Well, he replied. Very helpful conversation. He laughed, then looked down, then back up, then down again. I couldn't help smiling. Nathaniel. What? You've looked more confident taking penalty kicks. Shut up. I laughed. His grin returned, then disappeared, then returned again, like he couldn't decide what to do. Finally, he took a breath and stepped a little closer. Not enough to touch me, just enough that my heartbeat started acting stupid again. The parking lot suddenly felt very quiet. Nathaniel's eyes found mine, held them. Neither of us spoke. Neither of us moved. But for the first time all night, I began to realize exactly where this was heading. And judging by the look on his face, Nathaniel had realized it too. The parking lot lights cast pale circles across the asphalt. Everything outside those circles felt dark, quiet, private. Nathaniel stood in front of me, looking more nervous than I'd ever seen him, which was saying something, because this was the same guy who could take a penalty kick in front of thousands of people without blinking. Now, he couldn't seem to figure out what to do with his hands. I smiled. That seemed to make him even more nervous. Stop looking at me like that. Like what? Like you're enjoying this. I am enjoying this. He groaned. I knew this would happen. What? The second you realized I was the nervous one. I laughed. Maybe a little. Nathaniel shook his head. Then his expression softened, and suddenly neither of us were joking anymore. The air changed, again, the way it had several times tonight. Only this time there was no interruption, no coach yelling from across the field, no teammates around, no game waiting to be played, just us. My heart was pounding so hard I was convinced he could hear it. Nathaniel took a slow breath, then another. Cole. Yeah? For a second, he looked like he might back out, like he might retreat into a joke or change the subject. Instead, he stepped closer, close enough that I could see every detail in his face. The tiredness from the game, the emotion from the loss, the vulnerability he'd been carrying all night. And beneath all of it, hope. I've wanted to do something for a while. My pulse jumped. Oh? Nathaniel laughed nervously. That sounded smoother in my head. I couldn't help smiling. You're doing great. You're impossible. That's what you keep telling me. His eyes lingered on mine, longer than before, and suddenly the space between us felt very small. My chest tightened, not from fear, from anticipation, because for the first time, I knew exactly what was happening, and so did he. Neither of us looked away. The world seemed to narrow until all I could focus on was Nathaniel, his eyes, his smile, the way he kept glancing at my lips before looking back up. Then finally, he moved, slowly, giving me every chance to stop him, every chance to step back. I didn't, not even for a second. When his lips met mine, everything else disappeared. The stadium, the championship, the loss, the pressure, all of it, gone. It wasn't dramatic, wasn't perfect, just real. A brief, gentle kiss that somehow felt more significant than anything I'd ever experienced. When we pulled apart, neither of us moved very far. Nathaniel stared at me. I stared back. Then he smiled. The biggest, happiest smile I'd seen all night. And I couldn't stop smiling either. Wow, he said quietly. Yeah. Okay, I laughed. Okay? He rubbed the back of his neck. I had something smarter prepared. Apparently not. Apparently not. We both started laughing, the tension finally breaking. Not disappearing completely, just becoming something warmer, something easier. Nathaniel shook his head. I can't believe I kissed you in a parking lot after losing the biggest game of our lives. I smiled. Not exactly how I imagined tonight going either. No? No, he laughed. Good. For a few minutes we stayed there talking, neither of us ready to leave. Eventually Nathaniel leaned against my car. So, what are we telling people? I blinked. People? Yeah. The team. The guys. Everybody. The reality of that hit immediately. We'd spent so much time getting through tonight that neither of us had really considered tomorrow, or next week, or the rest of our lives. Nathaniel must have noticed the expression on my face, because he quickly added, "Hey." I looked up. "We don't have to decide everything right now." The reassurance helped. A lot. "We'll figure it out." The same words I'd told him earlier. This time, he smiled. Together. There it was. The word we'd both been avoiding. And hearing him say it made my chest feel strangely full. Together. Not alone anymore. Not hiding anymore. Together. Eventually, we exchanged one last smile. One last reluctant goodbye. Then headed to our separate cars. I watched Nathaniel pull out of the parking lot first, his headlights disappearing into the darkness. Only after he was gone did I finally get into my own car. For a few moments, I just sat there, hands on the steering wheel, staring ahead, trying to process everything. A few hours earlier, we'd lost the championship. The season was over. One chapter of our lives had ended. Yet somehow, it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like the start of something entirely new. And as I drove home beneath the empty night sky, I couldn't stop thinking about one thing. For the first time in a very long time, I was excited to see what happened next. The next morning felt surreal. I woke up and immediately wondered if I had imagined everything. Then my phone buzzed. "Nathaniel, you awake?" A second message followed. "Actually, don't answer that. If you're reading this, you're obviously awake." I laughed before I was even fully conscious. Then another message arrived. "Still thinking about last night?" My stomach instantly did that thing it had been doing around him for months. Only now, there was a reason. Me. "Good morning to you too." 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared, then reappeared. Nathaniel was overthinking, which was honestly adorable. Finally, "Can I see you today?" I smiled. "Yeah." His response came so fast it was almost embarrassing. "Good." We met that afternoon at a small park near the edge of town, a place we'd visited before after practice, usually to kick a ball around or complain about coach. This time felt different. Everything felt different. I spotted Nathaniel first. He was sitting on a bench beneath a large tree. The moment he saw me, he smiled. And just like that, every nervous thought disappeared. Because that smile was for me. Not as a teammate, not as a friend. Me. The realization still felt unbelievable. Nathaniel stood as I approached. For a second, we both froze, unsure of what the rules were now. Then he laughed. "This is weird. A little. We've known each other forever. And suddenly, I don't know how to say hello." "Exactly." I shook my head. "Glad it's not just me." Nathaniel grinned. Then we started walking. The conversation came surprisingly easily, the same way it always had. Only now there was less distance between us. Emotionally, physically, in every way. At one point, our hands brushed. Neither of us pulled away. A few minutes later, Nathaniel casually took my hand, like he'd been thinking about doing it for a while, like he'd finally gotten tired of waiting. My heart nearly exploded. He noticed. Of course he noticed. "You okay?" "No." He laughed. "Fair." We spent hours together, talking, walking, sitting by the water, discussing things we'd never really discussed before: family, fear, the future, what college would look like. Because that was the one complication neither of us could ignore. In a few months, everything would change. We'd be graduating, moving, starting new chapters. The thought hung over both of us. Eventually, Nathaniel brought it up. "You scared?" I knew exactly what he meant. "A little." He nodded. "Me too." The honesty helped, because I was scared. Not about us, about losing us. For months, I'd been terrified of never getting a chance. Now, I was terrified of getting one and watching it disappear. Nathaniel sat quietly for a moment, then looked at me. "Cole." "Yeah?" His expression turned serious.
Whatever happens after graduation,
He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I don't want this to be one of those things we regret." I stared at him. "What do you mean?" His fingers tightened slightly around mine. "I mean, if this works, great." A small smile appeared. "And if it's hard, we'll deal with it." Another pause. "But I don't want fear making decisions for us." The words landed heavily, because deep down, I knew he was right. Fear had controlled both of us for a long time. Fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of change, fear of losing each other. Maybe it was time to stop listening to it. I squeezed his hand. "I'm not going anywhere." The relief that crossed his face was immediate and genuine. Neither of us promised forever. Neither of us made impossible declarations. We were smarter than that. Life was unpredictable. The future was uncertain. But what we had right now was real. And for the first time, that felt like enough. As the sun began to set, we found ourselves back near the parking lot. The same awkward situation as the night before, neither of us wanting to leave. Nathaniel looked toward the sky, then back at me. "You know what I realized?" "What?" He smiled. "Losing the championship still hurts." I laughed. "Agreed. Like really hurts." "Definitely." His grin widened. "But somehow, it's not the first thing I think about anymore." My chest tightened, because I knew exactly what had replaced it. And judging by the look in his eyes, so did he. We stood there for a moment, watching the sunset, neither of us speaking, just enjoying the quiet. And for the first time since the final whistle blew, the loss didn't hurt quite as much. Because sometimes life takes something away and then gives you something you never expected. Something worth finding, something worth risking everything for. And standing beside Nathaniel, watching the last light disappear beyond the horizon, I had a feeling we were only getting started. The summer after graduation arrived faster than either of us expected. One minute we were finishing classes, the next we were standing on a football field wearing caps and gowns while families filled the bleachers. Life had a strange way of moving forward, whether you were ready or not. Nathaniel and I had spent the weeks after the championship figuring things out. Slowly, carefully. Not because we weren't happy, because we were. Ridiculously happy. But everything was new. We told a few close friends first. The reactions were almost funny, especially Tyler, our center back, the same guy we'd suspected months earlier. When we finally told him, he stared at us for 3 seconds, then rolled his eyes. About time. Nathaniel nearly fell out of his chair laughing. "You knew?" Tyler looked offended. "Everyone knew." No, they didn't. Cole, he pointed at us. You two looked at each other like lost puppies. I wanted to argue. The problem was, he was probably right. The rest of the team was surprisingly supportive. Some were shocked, most weren't. A few admitted they'd suspected something. Nobody made a big deal out of it, which honestly felt like the biggest relief of all. The fear I'd carried for years slowly started fading, not disappearing completely, but fading. And every time it returned, Nathaniel somehow knew exactly what to say, exactly how to make things easier. That was one of the things I loved most about him. He made difficult things feel manageable, even when he didn't realize he was doing it. Graduation day ended with photos, celebrations, way too many relatives asking awkward questions, the usual chaos. Eventually, the crowd began to thin. Families headed home, teachers packed up, students disappeared into their futures. Nathaniel found me near the edge of the field, still wearing his graduation gown, still somehow managing to look annoyingly good. He smiled when he saw me, and just like every other time, my heart reacted immediately. Hey, hey, his grin widened. We did it. We did. For a moment, we stood there, looking at the emptying field, the end of high school, the end of soccer, the end of one chapter. Nathaniel nudged my shoulder. You thinking about the championship again? I laughed. A little. Me too. The memories still hurt. Probably always would. But not the same way. Not anymore. Because whenever I thought about that night now, I remembered something else too. The conversation, the confession, the moment everything changed. Nathaniel seemed to be thinking the same thing, because he smiled softly. You know, what? Losing that game was the worst feeling I've ever had. I nodded. Same. He glanced at me, then looked back toward the field. But if we had won, I frowned. What? Nathaniel laughed. We would have been celebrating with everybody. Probably. We never would have ended up alone in that stadium. My stomach tightened. Because he was right. Every single thing could have happened differently. One goal, one bounce, one moment, and our lives might have taken completely different paths. Nathaniel shook his head. Funny how that works. Yeah. We stood quietly for a few seconds. Then he looked at me. A real look. The kind that always made everything else disappear. I think we got the better ending. The words hit me harder than I expected, because after everything we'd been through, I agreed. Completely. That evening, a group of teammates organized one final get-together. Nothing fancy, just food, music, stories, a chance to say goodbye before everyone scattered to different colleges. The night was filled with laughter, old memories, arguments about games we'd won, arguments about games we'd lost. Coach even showed up for a little while, which somehow felt more emotional than expected. At one point, he gathered several of us together, including me and Nathaniel. You boys gave this program everything. We listened quietly. Coach smiled. I'm proud of you. Simple words, but meaningful ones. When he eventually left, nobody spoke for a few moments. Then Tyler immediately ruined the emotional atmosphere by stealing someone's fries. Normal team behavior restored. Nathaniel leaned closer to me. I'm gonna miss these idiots. Me too. Even Tyler. Let's not get carried away. He laughed. The sound still made me smile every single time. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, Nathaniel and I ended up sitting on the hood of my car, a familiar place, a familiar view, the same stars overhead, the same quiet town around us. Only now, everything felt different, better. Nathaniel rested his shoulder against mine, comfortable, natural, like it had always belonged there. We're really doing this. I smiled. Looks that way. He nodded. College. The future. Us. The last word lingered. I turned toward him. You worried? A little. Me too. Nathaniel laughed softly, then shrugged.
But that's okay.
I raised an eyebrow. Oh? He smiled. Because whatever happens next, his fingers found mine. I don't have to figure it out alone. The warmth that spread through my chest was impossible to describe. Not excitement, not relief, something deeper, something steadier. The kind of feeling that made you believe things might actually work out. I squeezed his hand, and for a while, neither of us spoke. We simply sat there beneath the stars. Two former soccer teammates. Two idiots who spent months pretending not to notice what was right in front of them. Two people whose lives changed after the worst loss of their athletic careers. Funny how that worked. The championship trophy belonged to someone else. Always would. But as I sat there beside Nathaniel, watching the lights of our hometown glow in the distance, I realized something important. We lost the final. We lost the title. We lost the season. But somehow, I felt like we had won anyway.